Hello guys, it's Twi here. I have not made a video in a long time. I think the last time I made a video I was in high school. Um, and now I'm working on my master's degree. Woo! Clinical psychology. Um, but that's not what I'm here to talk about today. I'm here to talk about the fact that I am getting ready to get top surgery, which is really, really exciting. I am trans, non-binary. Um, I am agender. I use they, them pronouns, and I have since I was in high school. And I'm really excited to go on my merry way to get top surgery and figure that out. I have been trying, not trying, I have been worried about it this entire time in my life. Specifically, I've had the worry that I would go to gender therapy and get told that I am not trans enough. And I figured I'd make this video because I feel like if I have had this fear, other people would probably have this fear. Um, One of the things that I've noticed is that one of the things I know for sure is that gender expression is not gender identity. And um, I myself have a lot of very feminine attributes in the way that I express myself. I wear skirts and I wear dresses, and I enjoy wearing skirts and dresses and looking um, pretty, I guess. I'm a very vain person. I like to dress up and um I like to feel pretty. And I've noticed that when I dress up, I just feel happier. It's like I get to express myself and decorate my character. Um, and it makes me feel more at home in my gender even. But I didn't know if my gender therapist would understand that. Because I was so worried that someone would see me and think girl. And the thing is, I'm not a girl. I've never been a girl. And that might not be the same experience for every trans person, and I'm not talking for everyone. But I know for a fact that I've never been a girl. Um, and so I wanted to make this video to show that while my experience is not universal, maybe it can help other people um, either come to terms with their identity or feel as though they have a safe environment to explore their identity or even work towards gender affirming care themselves. Now, that's not to say that it is always safe. I happen to be in a blue state in the United States, and there are a lot of protections for trans people in my state. But there are a lot of states where it's not safe for trans people, and I understand that. Um, and so if it's not safe, like prioritize your safety, um, which is such a awful thing to have to say because there shouldn't be a world in which it's not safe to be yourself. But I don't want anyone getting hurt because of this video or my own experiences. With that said, I'm going to tell my story about how I learned I was trans and how my appointment went. Thank you for listening to my lengthy disclaimer. But let me tell the story. When I was younger, I had several moments in which I now understand that I was showing signs of being trans. The first story happens to be when I was about 6 to 8. I was signing up with my father for Pandora, the music streaming service. And when you sign up, you need you need to sign up and put in your gender for whatever reason. And it asked for my gender, and there were three options, which was abnormal at the time, especially because it was the early aughts. Um, and the options were something along the lines of male, female, and prefer not to answer. And so I asked my father, I was like, why is there a third option? Why is there a prefer not to answer option? And my father said to me, and this is a very odd explanation now that I think about it, he said to me that if there was a company signing up for the streaming service, they needed to have a company account, and because the company wouldn't have a gender, they needed a prefer not to answer option. And so I was a little disappointed, but I like understood. Meanwhile, my father expressed that he had to use the restroom, and he went to the restroom, and I was left to click on an answer. And I sat there for more than 5 minutes wondering what answer to pick because I didn't want to pick female. I didn't want to pick female. I knew I didn't want to pick male. And the choice that was sticking out to me was prefer not to answer. I was so convinced that I wanted to pick prefer not to answer because that's the choice that felt right. Um, and I didn't pick it because my dad came back. And so I knew I had to pick female because I didn't want to have this moment of doubt in front of my father because I knew something was wrong about it, except for like there wasn't anything wrong about it now that I know what it was. But I didn't know that at the time. But so I picked female and I went on with my life. But that is a moment that I will remember forever. Um, second, the second time I experienced my gender dysphoria was when I was playing a video game. My favorite video game um, from when I was younger. It's called Rune Factory Frontier. I don't know if anyone knows it. Um, it's such a fun game. There's like, it's very similar to Stardew Valley, in that it is a game where you build up the town and you talk to the townspeople and you build up your farmland. But like what's really cool about it is there's this monster, there's this tower, kind of similar to the mine in Stardew Valley, but in the tower there's like monsters, and you have the ability to get a scratch brush and tame the monsters, and it's really cool. But that is very tangential to what I'm talking about. I just think the game is cool, and I really like playing it, and I played it on the Wii. Um, Meanwhile, the game, not meanwhile, anywho, there we go. Anywho, the game, um, didn't offer gender selection. You could not play as a boy or a girl. You could only play as a boy. And I loved it. I did not want to play as a girl. I hated having to choose to play as a girl when I played video games. And when that game took that choice away from me, which now I realize is a choice that like reinforced the patriarchy and was kind of not a cool thing to do, but like I I thought it was the best thing ever. Um because I didn't have to choose girl. I had this obligation all the time when I was younger to choose girl, and I hated it so much. But this game took that option away from me and stuck me in the boy role, and that was so refreshing because I had never been in the boy role, and it wasn't girl, and it was amazing. And so it's one of the reasons I love playing that game so much, and it's one of the reasons I remember it with such fond memories. Um, so that's the second time that I have a memory of being trans. Um, and then the third time, before I knew I was trans, um, I was I played soccer as a kid. And that meant that I hung out with the soccer kids. I wasn't necessarily friends with them. I didn't actually make friends till high school. I was pretty bullied when I was younger. But that's regardless. That's besides the point. Um, However, I played soccer with the soccer kids, and there was this one kid, who I will call Casey. I'll just call her Casey. Um, she now I know, now like that I look back on it, she had a crush on this other kid, um, who I'll call Nick or something. I don't know. She had a crush on Nick, and she was confessing to him. She was talking to him, and I overheard the conversation. And she basically said, like, uh, I overheard the tail end of the conversation. And she was like, I have a crush on you, blah, 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 which I didn't hear, but I heard his response. And Nick told her, I'm sorry, but I don't see you as a girl. Um, and while that was a crushing thing for Casey to hear, um, probably because she thought of herself as a girl, um, it was amazing for me to hear. 'Cause I was like, you can do that? Oh my gosh, I didn't know that was possible. Um, and so it left me feeling hope. I felt so much hope at that. And I ended up I ended up um basically trying to emulate Casey. And this went on for years. Casey happened to be very sporty. She wore her hair in a high ponytail all the time. She wore basketball shorts and jerseys to school. And she always played with the soccer players. And I did the same. My fashion sense changed drastically. I started wearing my hair in a high ponytail. I started wearing not boxers, jerseys to school, and I started wearing basketball shorts every single day. Um, I even started clipping my nails, and that's something that I don't do. It's a sensory nightmare for me. I don't cut my nails because it hurts me to cut my nails. But I did it because I wanted to not be seen as a girl. And emulating Casey was the way I thought that people would stop seeing me as a girl. Um, Now I learned that that's not the case. It didn't help any, and people still called me a girl, and they still used she, her pronouns, and um, I still had that sense of dysphoria all the time. So it didn't help. But I was still completely lost, and I had no name for my feelings until high school. When I got to high school, I joined my school's GSA, uh, Gay Straight Alliance Club, and I did it purely because I wanted to be kind and I wanted to be a good ally. Um, Little fun fact about me: when I was younger, uh, probably about 6 to 8, I shipped Gaston and LeFou. without knowing what shipping was because I watched Beauty and the Beast and my little brain was like, oh, so LeFou loves Gaston. Um, and I had no clue there was any sort of like taboo against gay people or any like societal implications for that. I just knew that LeFou loved Gaston and the two of them should be in a relationship. Um, and so my whole life I have not had any sort of like I've probably had internalized homophobia because society imparts its rules on people without us knowing it, but I've never had any sort of homophobia that I've known about. Um, so I just thought it was kind of funny. Especially because like when I was in middle school, people would be talking and they'd be like, "Oh my gosh, you're gay," blah blah blah. And I'd be like, "Oh, thank you. That just means I'm happy." Um, and I would say something along the lines of, "Wow, I I wonder if if people use the word gay because gay people are happy with themselves and are happy in their relationships. Um I wonder if that's what the etymology of the word was. Like that that was my thought process. So it was like really kind of weird. But no, anyway, I still don't know the etymology of the word gay, by the way. I'll probably look that up. Um, anyway, I got to high school and I joined the GSA because I wanted to be a good ally and I wanted to learn more about the LGBTQ plus community. And I got there and it was the first week of school and we were going over all the LGBTQ plus terms and all the flags and we got to non-binary and agender. And I immediately felt this sense of identity. Like, I felt this sense of understanding, and I identified so much with the gender identity that had been presented. Um, and I knew from that moment on that I was non-binary. I knew from that moment on that I was agender. And I knew from that moment on that what I've been experiencing this entire time was dysphoria. Um, and it was so refreshing and it was so helpful to me because I had felt wrong this entire time. Um, and I knew that there was something different about me. I knew that people didn't typically feel this disconnect from themselves and their bodies. In fact, I actually had a conversation with my father at one point in time where I said something along the lines of, I don't understand trans people. Um, I was like, I respect them uh, and I don't have anything against them, but I don't understand them. That was the conversation I had, and my father asked me why. And I said it was because I don't understand caring about your gender. Um, which is not true. I did understand caring about your gender. I just didn't understand relating to the gender you were born with or relating to a specific gender because I didn't realize there was an option for relating to no gender. Um, I was not old enough and I was not experienced enough and I did not have enough knowledge to understand that there was an option to not have a set gender and not partake in the rules of gender. And so my relationship with gender has always been so disconnected, and I've always felt so disoriented by the thought of gender. And so I didn't understand trans people, and I couldn't put my thoughts into words because I didn't have the words to use. But in that moment in time in my GSA, I understood and it all clicked. like immediately. It was it was really funny because like it felt like coming home in my own brain. I don't know if that makes any sense, but it was such a cool and enlightening experience, and I've never felt something like that again. Um, because I'm still not at home in my own body. Um, and I'll never be at home in my own body until I have top surgery and until I get a hysterectomy. But those are options for me now, and that's amazing. Um, but I have officially gone to the gender therapist. I've gone to the gender therapist, and it was really cool. She asked me about how I relate to my gender. And she was basically trying to figure out whether I fit the criteria for gender dysphoria, because that's what you need to get the surgeries, the gender affirming care. And so the entire appointment was me talking about my experiences with my gender. Um, and that might be intimidating for some people if people are not ready to just talk, or if they're particularly shy, or if they don't like socializing. But it was really refreshing for me because I haven't had people um, ask me very much about my experiences with my gender. Like, I've spoken to my partner and I've spoken to my friends, and I share those stories every so often, but I've never had anyone just ask me outright um, what it's been like to learn about my own gender experiences. So it was really cool telling my story, and it felt like getting something off my shoulders. Um, as though I was Atlas carrying the world, if you know what I mean. Um, but so I told my story, and it was really affirming because every so often she would say something along the lines of, well, "Oh, I've heard that a lot." Like, there was a point in time when she asked me um what it feels like to be in the body that I have, and I said that it feels like I am directing a puppet. Like, I am running a show, but I'm not connected to my body. Um, and that I'd like to be connected to my body. I'd like to feel at home in my body, but I don't. And she said that she gets that a lot. And I learned that my experience is not universal, and it felt so good. I mean, no, I learned that my experience is not, oh gosh, what's that word? It's not solitary, and that felt so good. Um, and so my appointment was so gender affirming. And I've got another one on 420. Um, silly number, 420. But I'm very excited for it, and we're gonna go over more stuff, and I'm gonna talk about my experiences again, and it's gonna be very great. Continually, she talked about the different kinds of gender affirming care I can get. Um, she asked me if I wanted hormones. I don't, because I don't want to change my voice. I don't want to really change my hormones or anything. I just want to change my appearance, and I don't want to have a period anymore. It's so so dysphoria inducing. I hate it. Um, but that's a different experience for everyone, but she walked me through all of the options. Um, and there's so many different options, and I had no idea, and it was so cool. Um, and she talked about the recovery time for both surgeries, and she talked about the uh, differences in doctors and how insurance might play into it. And she talked about the fact that there is a board of people who go over the diagnosis and decide whether you are fit for getting those gender affirming surgeries. Um, and so that's really intimidating. I don't particularly like the idea of a board of people going over my records and going, I don't know if they're trans enough. But you know what? If I don't get determined to be trans enough, I will just try again. That's it. And if I try enough, then eventually they will comply. That's what I kind of think. But so I learned a lot and I'm ready to learn more. Um, and I'm really excited. Uh, and I'm really hopeful. So I've never felt this hopeful about getting gender affirming care before. And it was just altogether a good experience. So I hope that helps people. Um, I want to be helpful for people. Um, and yeah, that's pretty much it. Uh, you can watch the rest of the speed paint. I might comment on that. Currently I'm doing color, so I didn't show you my sketch. My sketching thing that I do, whatever that word is, because it's a really long process. It's a really long process. I look at so many references and um I have to like, oh my gosh, I had to look at like 4 separate references for the wings. I had to message my partner who is a digital media and uh art student, and digital art student, and actually ask for references because I couldn't find the pose I needed and I couldn't find the wings in the right shape. And they actually sent me several image like references of wings, and it was so helpful. But so that's one of the things I do. And then one thing that's really helpful that I don't know if most artists do this because it's also not super helpful because there's a lot of AI art on Pinterest, but I go on Pinterest and I like surf through the art until I find something that's not AI art, which is a little difficult. But I look for poses on Pinterest because there's it's a lot better at searching for poses that you might want to find. Um, and so, because I get really specific when I'm looking for my poses. And so Pinterest is a very good place for that. Continually, then I start my lining process. And with this one, I went a little fancy with the line work. I thickened the lines and cut out pieces for the feathers. I've done that in my art before and I just really liked the look of it, so I did it again. And I used a pretty rough brush so that it looks a little rough around the edges. I don't know, it felt like a piece that kind of needed it. Um because because she's falling and it matched the mood that I was trying to convey. Um so there's that. Then I got to coloring, and if you notice, I changed the color of her hair from the reference. That reference is from 2020, I think, and I noticed that her hair washed her skin out. The pink in her hair washed her skin out, and I wanted her hair to be a better color to match her skin. Um, Now that's not necessarily to say that people with darker skin should every time have hair that matches their skin color, because like people should rock whatever hair they want to rock. But it felt like a better design choice to have hair that matched her skin tone. Um, so I hope that wasn't low-key racist. Because that's not at all what I intended. Um, And I feel like the brighter pink, the more saturated pink looks a lot better. Then I work on the shadowing, and I actually have a really cool way, I think, that I do that. I apply a couple masks at first. I apply a multiply layer and yeah, so I start with a multiply layer and I do a gradient where the shadow needs to be. So I do a gradient with the color that I want the shadow to be. So in this instance, I wanted it to be purple because like while she's not falling in the end, I kind of wanted it to be um inspired by the end. So you'll notice that this piece will look a lot like the end, which is kind of funny. Um so I did purple and I did purple lighting and I did purple shading and it's all purple. Um and I feel like the purple looks really good with the pink and the blue. Probably because pink and blue make purple. Woo! um, but so uh, I always apply, not always, but I apply a gradient so that it goes from dark to light, so that you can see where the shading will go and you can see where the lighting will go and you can see where the light source is. And then I do my hard shading into my soft shading, or I'll do it the other way around. Sometimes my soft shading into my hard shading, depending on how I'm feeling. I shade the hair. I shade the body. I do a little bit of blending. And then I really like doing like soft lighting and hard lighting. I think it's really cool. And I like adding little lighting dots and stuff. I think it's fun. I always work on the background last, unless it's like a really complicated background. Um, then I work on the background first. Like I had this one painterly piece that I had to do the background first because the foreground was a person and then the background was like a whole scene. It's really cool. And I don't show it to you guys in this video, so I don't know why I mentioned it, but I like it, so that's it. Um, but yeah, in this I'm adding the lighting and I had to do a lot of messing around so that there was lighting in the foreground too. But yeah, that's it. Have fun. Have a good day, guys.